Right now, one can only but imagine how the family of Khayalethu Magadla must be feeling after a harrowing 14-day search for the missing 6-year-old. We've seen emergency services and Soweto residents come together to search for the minor who slipped and fell into an open manhole in Dlamini, Soweto 2 weeks ago. In today's special focus, we look at the strides made during the search for young Khayalethu. I've got in studio with me today Joburg Water MD Nshabeni Mukwebo. We will have online Professor David Everett from the Wits School of Governance, and we're expecting a spokesperson for the EMS in Johannesburg, Robert Malauzi, to also join us. But we also have our reporters who've been tracking developments on the ground. This includes Slindolo Masigani as well as Ngobile Madlala. They all join us at the moment. And I just want to start with you, Slee, because of course you're speaking to the important part of this entire tragedy, which is Khayalethu Magadla's family. Tell me how they've been able to cope. Today's day 14, if I'm not mistaken, and still no signs of at least his body returning home.
Yeah, today marks 2 weeks since the disappearance of Khayalethu Magadla, and over the past couple of days, of course, we have seen efforts made by Joburg EMS as well as SAPS in terms of trying to locate him within the pipeline system. But to just give us a sense of how the family is feeling at this stage, I am joined by Khayalethu's father, Mr. Kollega Magadla. Ngiyabonga for isikhathi sakho baba. Ngicela nje ungitshele ngoba namhlanje sithi 2 weeks since uKhayalethu anyamalala. Njengomndeni nizizwa kanjani njengoba abe EMS bathi sebabhekile emapipini abamtholi?
Sibhlungu in such a way ukuthi ayikho enye indawo esingabheka kuyo, because we still believe ukuthi umntwana ungene epipini. And into engenza ukuthi ngisho kanjalo, abantwana they won't gang up ngamanga. And two, labantwana bakhuluma into different places. So my feeling as I was there on Monday, the pressure amanzi be too high, too fast, in such a way which I imagine on a Sunday le angene ngayo, of which it was this day. Everybody is there, majority community, yawasha, doing everything. Amanzi, surely, the pressure amanzi be higher than Udlula Monday, because Monday be high. So I imagine ukuthi umntwana onga 6 years onga ngoKhayalethu amanga ngena lapha ku 1.8 centimeter ukusuka phansi ukuya phezulu. I feel ukuthi lamanzi am push within few hours. Bese kaphumile kulama blockage and stuff. So I feel disappointed mabethi baqedile search, because I feel ukuthi umntwana if ever uphume namanzi, why they don't you follow the river or wherever the river iyakhona. I feel ukuthi they're supposed to check all those things, because they can't check amapipe in the pen, because the thing is ukuthi emphasize the pressure amanzi was too high on Sunday because everybody was there. So I feel ukuthi umntwana waphuma lapha wangena emanzini, noma ngabe ungene uhamba kude lo mntwana namanzi. I think they have to help me to satisfy my feelings. Lo mntwana wangena emanzini wahamba namanzi. You understand when I say need 2 days ngamanzi so check the pressure amanzi. You can see what I'm talking about, as is Sunday today. And then sivuke sasa siphinde sobheka pressure amanzi, you will see ukuthi still pressure amanzi sase high. You understand?
So baba ucabanga ukuthi laba abaphetheyo laba be EMS ama rescue ne City of Joburg bangayenza more ukuthi bazama ukumthola?
Yes, as they promised me, iMayor Bela ekhaya ikhuluma na mouth to mouth, yathi kimi they won't stop up until they find my son. So I'm surprised mabezongitshela ukuthi isearch ya stop bazophilindela anything evelayo and stuff, because I feel ukuthi umntwana usemanzini umntwana. They have to check all the river la iyakhona. They have to stop akhona kuze ngibe satisfied. And I feel ukuthi banama helicopters angwabone mina. Ngizangibone kwa helicopters, ngangibone kwazinja lezo, ngezwe nje ukuthi zikhona beza bazothatha isicathulo but and stuff babuya bathi bazifake twice ayakutholakala anything, but njengoba azangibone. I understand.
Baba, ngiyabona khona bomama bemthandaza abazayo kuzosupport ifamily, ngiyabona khona amabike namhlanje. I-support leni ithola njengomndeni insiza kanjani?
As njengoba ngibona nami sisingime kanje ngistrong kanje. It's because of labantu abangisupportayo. Yeah, anyway now modlula la ngeke ngibone ukuthi ngoba bomntwana because labantu enginabo. You know everyone, everybody. You know, sengize ngastopana ukuthi ngikhale because ngikhalisa abantu abaningi. You know mangikhala I feel ukuthi mangibheke emuva everybody is crying. So I feel ukuthi ngenza into wrong because iphila the situation yimi kumele ngibe iphila kumele ngibe stronger than before. I understand. That's the only option I have for now.
Umama kaKhayalethu yena unjani khona manje?
Umama ngasho ngithi na strong as I'm saying ukuthi imthandazo yabantu imthandazo yethu it makes us strong in such a way ukuthi nami ngithusa ukuthi ngathi uzokula after all this, but I feel better, I feel much better mangibona khala yabo because I feel ukuthi at least uzo break out that thing, you understand. So that's the situation, is phila ngokhala, you know ufikelwa insizi ukhumbule modlala naye, you know zehle inyembezi, you know ngiyazi feeling esoul since ngazalwa mfethu. Ngiyaqala ukuyibona into eso ngiyazibuza ukuthi why mina mara ngifuna ukuzibuza because umsebenzi kaNkulunkulu wenza izinto zakhe ngendlela yakhe. I believe kuNkulunkulu.
Baba nje kokugcina yini oyikhumbulayo ngoKhayalethu mhlambe mangakhuluma naye khona manje ukathini?
Ngathi wahamba ngeenyawo. That's the only thing esingaqala.
Beyadlala umntana.
Sihlale sibaga ukuthi ngiyazithenga icathulo but yeah noma abona imoto leyo uzoqala lunguza athi uphuka baba athi babethina athi ngikalethethi icathulo zami lapho uzongithethisa. That's the thing. Usually
Ngabufakaza lapho awubedlala nomntanami mama.
Ngizothubani baba?
Ngukheza walokuhele bedlala nomntanami same age group ngiyamthanda same age group uKhayalethu wasesihlakele sihle engisithandayo mangimkhuza hayi anganginaki njena uyakhumbuleka. It's a big guy then, big guy.
Baba ngiyazi ukuthi khona i-family spokesperson obothe singakhuluma naye, bengicela nje ukuthi ungilandele yona sikudedele khona manje. Siyabonga. All right, Masego, that is Khayalethu's father. I just wanted to let him go because we will be speaking to yet another family member. That's Khayalethu's uncle. But I want our colleague Kulufelo to just give you a picture of what we're seeing at this point in terms of the support that the family has been receiving over the past couple of days. You can see there are some organizations that are just coming through in their numbers. It's a Sunday. In fact, last week Sunday we saw a similar situation where we had community members coming out to come and support the Magadla family. I just want to bring in another resident here of Soweto. Okay, Baba Mthetho, yeah, ngizokhuluma nawe baba. Ngizokhuluma nawe. All right. You can see it's a bit busy here, Masego, but we will be speaking to the family spokesperson Ubabveli Mthetho. I'm grabbing one of yes, of course, a very famous Soweto resident here, Mazibuko. Just to introduce yourself and to give us a sense as to why you had to come out today to the Magadla home.
Yeah, we are here as the Soweto people. We are also in support of the bikers from Soweto. The connotation all the time is that the bikers are violent, and then it is the connotation that says now umntwana wase South Africa lo, umntwana wase Soweto, and then we're here to support the family, and then we just lit the candle with the mother and the grandmother, so that we are just saying, you know, God show us the way, give us the light, let's find umntwana. And then as we speak now, we will be walking with some family members down to the side. Right. And then Amabikers would also like to light a candle, just as a sign and symbol of saying, please Lord, show us. And it's said that it happens on the very month when we are supposed to be celebrating young people. And we are with the bikers also in a project called Making Our Community Safer for Children. And we are crying out that our children need more safety and protection.
I mean, this is very concerning to think that a young person could just fall into an unopened manhole and 2 weeks later was still searching for his body at this point.
The most sad part is that this child fell in that particular hole playing. It's in a play area. So, you know, most of the time when we talk about children's safety, we talk about GBV and all that. We forget that that safety could be involving where the children are being allocated to play, where the children are being, electricity, just now as we're here, electricity just went off. Now, these are some of the things that as a community we are saying, please, let us protect and save our children. We just from a Child Protection Week, which ended on the 5th of June. Why are we still having our children, and for that matter, black children dying? You know, and we thought after 1976 we won't see children dying this way, but we still see more of them. We are hoping to be strengthened by the Magadla family, by the closer neighboring family, but we are also saying to them, they've got us behind them, and we don't want to make this a political football. We want to make this a community issue. You know, a child belongs to the community, not to a family. So if we can take out politics out of this and make it a point that we support the family and we support the community, then we will be getting somewhere.
All right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, God
Thank
bless.
you. Mr. Seth Mazibugo there, just one of those residents here from Soweto who we know very well. Masiko, I just want to allow you to be able to bring in the other guests, but I will be speaking to Ubabveli Mthethwa. He's the family spokesperson. I just want you to allow us to be able to make our way to the scene. We understand there's going to be a candlelight ceremony, so we just want to make our way there, and that is where we'll be able to speak to Umalum Mthethwa.
Definitely connect with you again as soon as you are at the scene. Of course, Soweto residents supporting the family and trying to, uktuduza and give them courage during this difficult time. Let's bring in Robert Malawutsi. He is, in fact, the EMS spokesperson, the Joburg EMS spokesperson. He joins us now on the line. Mr. Malawutsi, just explain something to me. You know, this similar incident happened as well in Orange Farm, and that little boy was found, I think, within 6 days or so. Is it, how many of these type of scenes is EMS called out to in the last couple of years? How many have you had to be a part of in the last couple of years? I'm not sure if we have Mr. Malawutsi with us. Mr. Malawutsi, if you can hear us, please just let us know. In the past at least 5 years or so, are you able to tell us, okay, they're telling me that we've actually lost connection to Robert Malawutsi, the Joburg EMS spokesperson. Let's speak to Mr. Mukwebo while we try and reconnect with Mr. Malawutsi. Mr. Mukwebo, during the course of the week, Joburg Water, of course, had to make that decision. I don't assume it was a very easy one. Yes, it was a noble one in terms of trying to find the 6-year-old boy and give the family closure. But you also had to balance, right, in terms of the residents who actually had to go without water for a couple of hours, I think it was, because of this.
Good afternoon, Masiho, and to viewers. Indeed, you're quite right. That was not an easy decision at all. Really, it took a lot of planning, a lot of discussion for us to say, let's really go for a final approach that we'll need to do in terms of making sure that we intensify the search or the work that the search and rescue team was doing, which really to make sure that we minimize the flow into the system. You'll really understand that the difficulty was we are working on a live system, and which makes it very difficult because the flows are quite high. So for us to reach that decision where we had to close water, it means we never had any other solution but to make sure that we will intensify our search so that we can be able to assist the family to have some closure.
And how many areas were affected when you looked at it after that day of having to halt the water supply? How big was the problem in terms of residents who said, we don't have access to water?
It was quite a big area because we had to close about 4 or 5 reservoirs. I mean, the Linesia area was affected. The part of the western part of Soweto, Protea Glen, Dorenkop, Tsepisong, they were affected. So there were about 5 reservoirs that we had to close. And some of them had, ended up with a situation where they never had water for about 3 days because the team that's busy with the process of searching for the body of Khaya, they were still busy and we could not open the water until they reached a certain point.
Now, of course, that also will exacerbate service delivery process, I'm pretty sure, especially, what you saw in Soweto during the course of the week. But tell me, Mr. Mugwebo, in terms of open manholes, what is, the city doing and what is Joburg doing to make sure that you close these, especially in townships? I mean, I'm sure you heard my question to Mr. Mlaudzi. There's been another boy who fell into an open manhole before in Orange Farm. It's not a long time ago. So what's your role there? Why are you not playing your role?
We have various initiatives. Firstly, if you look at traditionally, the manhole cover mainly were made of concrete, which of course it will have steel as well as the steel ring, as well as the frame for that manhole was made of steel. So that really increases the chances of vandalism, while people are looking for scrap metals. We have, for the past 10 years or so shifted into a polymer cover, which is more of a fiber cement, which has no scrap value. And above that, if you look at because all in all, we've got about 12,000 kilometers of sewer lines in the city of Johannesburg with 1.3 million of manholes. So we also have a preventive maintenance team that really focuses on high-risk area. The high-risk area, basically, we are looking at the outfall lines. These are the big lines, as well as the collector lines, where we are able to cover about 500 kilometers of walking the lines, inspecting to check whether are there any missing manhole. If they are there, the team responds and then be able to replace them. The major issue, the major issue that we rely on is mainly on residents reporting, because you will appreciate that with 1.3 million covers, 12,000 kilometers of sewer network, it's just impossible that we can be able to walk through that system on a daily basis or annually for us to be able to really identify all the faults on the system. Our measure...
but the issue here is the townships. This is where the problem seems to mainly be, and that's why they feel very forgotten, because it's their children. We don't hear of these cases in the suburbs.
Indeed. That's why I said for us, we cover about 500 kilometers per annum of the major outfall lines. These are the lines that, we regard them as high risk. And our team really, on a daily basis, they cover 2.5 kilometers, building up to an annual number that we cover of about 500 kilometers to make sure that whatever that we identify gets attended to. But above that, if you look at our approach in terms of missing manhole cover, whenever we receive a call, we aim to make sure that that cover is replaced within 24 hours. And the reason why we do that is simply because we understand the risk that goes with manhole. So any manhole covers that gets reported to us, it gets replaced in a matter of within 24 hours.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to just stay with me here in studio, Mr. Mugwebo. We just have to take a quick break. We still have Nchabeni Mugwebo from Joburg Water. Of course, we have Slindelo Masigani, who is on her way to the scene where Khayalethu fell. And of course, we'll be speaking to Nqobile Madlala as well, who also covered this particular story. Stay tuned. Okay. Which one? Okay. Hi, Prophets Masekho, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Thank you. Can you sit closer to your device?
I'm talking to a giant screen, that's the problem. Is that best?
Hey, Slee, can you still hear me?
Yeah, you can come back to me.
Okay, I'm just going to start with Nqobile, ne?
Okay.
So Robert Mulaudzi, it's not going to work. I'm on time? Oh gosh, and you know, EMS was very important in this whole thing.
Maseko?
Hello. Hello. Hi.
Is dropping here. Is he not coming to studio?
No, he didn't come to studio. He was supposed to.
Okay, so can I speak to those issues that we saw?
Yeah. Yes. Welcome back. Now, one can only but imagine how the family of Khayalethu Magadla must be feeling after a harrowing 14-day search for the missing 6-year-old's body. We've seen emergency services and Soweto residents come together to search for the minor who slipped and fell into an open manhole in Dlamini in Soweto 2 weeks ago. In today's special focus, we continue to look at the strides made during the search for Khayalethu. I've still got with me in studio Joburg Water MD Nchabeni Mokwebo. EMS spokesperson Robert Mlaudzi is still trying to connect and join us via Zoom, but we do also have our reporters who've been tracking the developments, Nqobile Madlala as well as Slindelo Masigane, and we also have a professor from Wits University who will give us more details, especially about governance and town planning. Nqobile, let me start with you. In terms of the days that you spent covering this particular story, tell us what you saw, especially EMS personnel doing, especially the different things they started doing after not being able to find Khayalethu for so long.
Well, Maseko, I think when you enter that scene to go see what's happening, there is that hope that prevails from every other EMS person that was on the ground that this is the day. This is today, we are going to find Khayalethu. And that was basically what I saw every single day. You could see that everybody had geared up and they were ready and they were hopeful. I mean, when we were in Soweto and we were still at the park, I noticed that they were looking for different manholes, and you could see that they would walk around with maps. They would go as far as even dig some manholes which were already covered. You could see that. I mean, you would see the divers also going down, but there was that sense of hope that it will be the day where they will find Khayalethu, where they will go back home to his home and they will have the positive news. Unfortunately, it would go on and on day after day. And you would even hear from the EMS spokesperson when he speaks to us, he would say today looks positive, this is what we're going to do, this is what we are trying to do. You would see also the guys that are there on a mechanical side. When they created, they started with the boat we saw there. They started with Lindo Guhle, my colleague, that manned an unmanned boat which they sent in with the hope that it would do more work with the cameras. And then also as we were going towards the split chamber, we started seeing them using things like a boogie board instead of a boat, having heard also that there were hinders along the line where also the technology was starting to also not work as how they planned, where they found themselves stuck as well. But there was just a sense of hope that it will continue, and you could see that there was that passion, that drive on their side, that they want to find him, but unfortunately it was just not happening. But what this issue was speaking to also, Maseko, in a bigger picture is that really if you think about a child that went into a park and you think that's where a person is more secured. But in a sense, now you find that these areas where kids are supposed to be happy and fun and it's supposed to be okay, this is the area where you lose a young child. So it spoke to a lot of issues, and those EMS people, not just being an EMS personnel, but also being parents, you could see that there was a sense of empathy, a sense of sympathy. In fact, as we were going towards El Dorado Park, we saw some of the community members that would even come out and they would even offer things like water, that even offer things like if you want to come in and use a bathroom, whatever the case is, we are here. You would hear from some of the kids as well asking, do you think you're going to find Khayalethu? So I think in a bigger picture, you could feel that the community of Gauteng, in that case, that we were interacting with, everybody was just kind of hopeful. Everybody was pushing. Everybody was hopeful that this would be the day, and that they were hoping that EMS will be those people that would be the heroes of the day, and that they would come up with these solutions and that they will work. But essentially on the ground, Masego, you could see that they were trying everything. At some point, they would tell you how it feels like to be under the tunnel. You would hear them communicate. You would see the frustration when they come out and they don't see anything. When they come out and they look at it again and they think, okay, so where to from here? So it's quite an interesting search, but you could see that a lot of it was driven by passion, a lot of it was driven by emotion, and a lot of them had just come to par to ensure that Khayalethu is found.
Nqobile, as you speak about the community, I just want to quickly go to Slee. Slee, we do have to bring in Robert Malauti as well, but I see you are already with community members who are having a candlelit ceremony. Give us more details in terms of, what they're saying about so many days passing and still no answers.
Well, we find ourselves back here at the manhole, which is said where Khayalethu did fall through, slipped and fell through. I'm joined by community members, some of the bikers that came to support the Magadla family. And I just want to bring in Umalum Veli Mthetho, who's the family spokesperson. Baba, just to give us a sense as ukuthi nizizwa kanjani njengomndeni sekuyi 2 weeks manje akatholakali simela bathi uKhayalethu ube khona.
Siyifamily asiphathekanga kahle because umntwana is 2 weeks manje angatholakali. Nathi asazi ukuthi kumele senze njani because umntwana basingathola iclosure sithole noma ithambe ukuthi umntwana really umntwana uwelile la sithole leyo nto le nathi sikwazi ukubambelela kuyo kodwa kwamanje nathi sihlale sikhathazekile ngazo zonke inkathi insuku asitholi ukuphefumula sitholi ukuphumula because umntwana asazi ukuthi kwenzakalani. Ngithanda nokubonga nomphakathi njengoba nibona umphakathi la ukuthi unathi ezisumndeni kwaMagadla ume nathi kodwa ukuphumula sokutholi ngathi singathola iclosure ukuthi kwenzakalani asiphathekanga kahle neze siswana.
Masego, before I bring in one of the community leaders, I just want the ceremony to just start, and then as you speak to your other guests, when you can come back to me, and we'll be speaking to one of those leaders from the bikers who came to support the family. But as you continue to speak to your other guests, I just want the actual candlelight ceremony to begin, and you can continue with the program.
All right, let's bring in Robert Malauzi. He is the spokesperson for EMS. Robert, while hearing Nqobile basically describe all the things or the technology that you started to bring in to try and find this boy, tell me, I'm interested because we have covered, for instance, that other tragic incident where another boy fell into an open manhole in Orange Farm. So how many of these really happen? How many of these does Joburg EMS usually get called out to?
I think in the last 9 months we got the one which you mentioned now in Orange Farm. So mostly it will be mostly river streams, but the sewer system, I will say the last one was 9 months ago. That was in Orange Farm.
Usual, I mean, with this particular one, little Khayalethu not being found after 14 days, does that ever happen?
Come again?
So with Khayalethu Magadla having to bring in all these technologies, robotics, etc., and it being 2 weeks later and still no positive results, is it usual?
No, you need to understand that, yes, the incident is unusual. I think we must inform our viewers out there that yes, the incident is unusual, whereby kids will fall into the main hole. It will happen, after some time, like what happened now. We only having another one after a year or two. So the area itself where we're operating, for instance, the storage system, the area itself, it's difficult to operate for us as rescuers. So hence we had to use all the resources which we might have. Like, for instance, I'll give an example. If we're talking about the storage system, a storage system is a confined space. It needs a specialized people who are trained in terms of confined space. It needs people who are, there's water. You need people who are trained in terms of aquatic rescue. You also need people who are trained in terms of hazardous materials, because there's also a gas, the methane gas along the storage system. So for us, it was like a 3-in-1 incident. We have to make sure that all those issues are looked after, because you cannot just deploy each and every one in that kind of incident. You needed people who are really skilled in terms of those areas which I've mentioned. So hence we had to deploy a number of people who were assisting us there. Of course, the other challenge was that while you're operating, you are supposed to satisfy or make sure that the residents they still continue with their lives, unlike other incidents which we respond to, because now and then we'll have to request our colleagues from Joburg Water to either isolate or shut down the water levels. And on the other side, the residents also were complaining. I've heard that our residents in Protea were not happy about the shutdown of water and things like this. So it was a very difficult operation, I must say. Difficult along the pipeline as we were operating, and also outside, because
all right, it looks like our connection to you is faulty again, Mr. Mulaudzi. Can you just try and make sure that you're at a place where your network will be a bit more stable? While you do that, let's take you to a short break. When we return, I'll be bringing in Professor David Everett from Wits University to tell us more about town planning and exactly where it is that government could improve, especially for the children in townships. Hi, Prof. Everett, it's Masego. Can you hear me?
Come in.
Yeah, I'm there.
Welcome back. Let's continue with that story that you've been seeing on eNCA throughout the course of the 14 days that emergency services have tried everything looking for 6-year-old Khayalethu Magadla, who fell into an open manhole while playing with friends at a park in Dlamini a few weeks ago. Now, it's 2 weeks exactly today, in fact, and we still do have our reporter, Slindelo Masigane, who's at that candlelight ceremony. But let me bring in Professor Everett from Wits University. Prof, when you look at this particular case and the one in Orange Farm, it begs the question, why do we see such things happen, particularly in townships? Is it a thing of people in townships not, being considered or being considered last? Is it a thing of poor planning? What is it?
It's certainly, I mean, townships were designed by apartheid to hold the majority of the population at some distance and underservice them, so they didn't want to stay here. And one would have hoped that when democracy came, we would try and develop township areas to raise them to the level of suburbs, which had obviously enjoyed far more investment under apartheid. But instead, it seems that what we've done is go for mass building, because of course people need houses to live in. But even the new RDP settlements that are being built or were being built and are hopefully being phased out were far more densely populated with houses closer together than even under apartheid. And so you're really cramming more and more people into areas that were already on a low starting point compared to suburbia. And this doesn't happen in suburbia, in part because, and I have to take issue with your studio guest who says within 24 hours of a report we replace a manhole cover. That's absolute nonsense. It's nonsense in the suburbs. It's nonsense in townships. Walk around anywhere, you find people trying to manufacture manhole covers and electric covers and stormwater drain covers because the city council is utterly unable to replace them. And in part, that's not their fault. I get that when they were metal, they were useful to recyclers, but now they're not. They're being made by this recycled plastic. So I don't understand why it is that we continue to be in a situation where there was the child in the school in Limpopo. This is not an isolated incident. It's almost a pattern of neglect, and children will always find the neglect. You know, children creep around little places and have accidents, and it's a tragedy for the family, as you could see from the people in Soweto having a prayer session in this cold for a child that may never appear, and I pray that he does. But after 2 weeks, you have to be really, really anxious, and the city council has to say, this is on us.
You alleging that in 24 hours you do close open manholes is nonsense. What's your response to that?
It's very unfortunate. Because what I'm telling you and telling the viewers is really based on facts. You just need to go to our annual report. We have proper system that is logged that no one can really manipulate. I mean, we use SEP in Johannesburg Water for our maintenance. I've looked even last week to see how many manholes, sewer manholes, do they get vandalized or stolen a year. It's about 2,400. And 98% of that number is replaced within 24 hours. It's information that we can make it available. It's information that's there that really no one can be able to manipulate.
So what happened with this
system.
manhole in Dlamini?
This particular one, in fact, when the incident happened, we immediately went to our system to check as to whether did we have our team working in that area. And unfortunately, we could not find in our system any records of our team working in that area. Our first search was from 1 July to now. And at that period, we only found 2 manholes that were reported as missing in the entire Dlamini, which were then replaced within 24 hours. And those manholes were not really in the immediate vicinity as to where the incident happened. After we visited the family on Wednesday, after the incident happened, we then, because we're informed that this particular incident was reported about 2 years back, we then went back to our system. But we checked from 1 July 2020, where we needed to understand the extent of the missing manhole in the area of Dlamini. We found that 8 were reported, and all were indeed replaced within 24 hours. But we could not find, even in that 2 years, really the reported missing manhole in the vicinity of where the incident happened. So these are the information that we made public as we're even issuing our media statement around around what we found so far around this issue of the missing manhole in the area.
So who's to blame here then? Because you're saying that you do seal manholes that you get reports are open, and obviously, like you said earlier, you can't be walking around each and every place throughout the city of Johannesburg, so you need people to let you know when a manhole needs sealing, right? But also at the same time, when you look at, I want to go back to the fact that this incident, what are you prioritizing really as a government entity when it comes to service delivery in townships of Johannesburg? Because I want to say it again, you never hear this incident happening in the suburbs. Why is it in the townships?
To answer your first question as to what is it really in terms of what we are prioritizing around this, there are many interventions, as I've indicated, which is we do it either from proactive basis, where we have high-risk lines that we have identified, which mainly are the outfall as well as the collector lines, which we then send our inspectors that they inspect the line. Wherever we find the missing covers or any blockage in that line, they get attended to. Of course, as I said, the challenge, of course, is that we can't cover the entire network. Our main issue is that we rely on the reporting. As to your question, who's to be blamed? For us right now, it's not about, who's to be blamed. It's mainly to find
because this is not an isolated it's not an isolated incident. So I think that it is about who is to take responsibility for this.
As I've indicated, we have been doing an investigation to try and understand the circumstances that led into this incident. Even though our investigation is not concluded yet, what I've indicated to you is what we know up to now. And our major focus really has been in the past 2 weeks to try by all means to find the body of Khaya so that we can really have a situation whereby the family have some form of closure. So as to, we are going still to look further to say what has really led to this manhole open. And then, is there any involvement of our teams that were there, even though our system are indicating that we didn't have any team working there in the past 2 years or so. But these are work that's still happening behind the scene as much as the search of the Khaya is happening, so that we understand exactly the situation that led into that sewer manhole open.
Before I bring in Robert Malauti, just to let the viewers know he has been able to reconnect again, I just want to bring Professor Everett back. Prof, in terms of what you said earlier about townships being built a certain way during apartheid, and now we've inherited, obviously, that type of, building and land planning, etc. I've heard that so many times before while interviewing government officials on this very channel. We've heard that so many times, but for how long should we be expected to accept this as an excuse?
Well, that's the question. And I think when these tragedies happen, it's too easy. It's really important to look out for the family and the school children who may be in it, all of the people who are affected. But that shouldn't in any way take away culpability, because if the system was working as well as your guest says it was, he would have known. If you think that to find a body, you go to an annual report to see if someone reported a manhole cover, you've got this completely the wrong way around. If we do not have teams going through townships, checking on this, checking on maintenance, then maintenance will become the problem that continues to kill our children. Because if you're saying it's the community's fault because no one told you the manhole cover was off, there's a fair point there. I think the community does have a job. All of us as community members have a job in telling all the services when something is going wrong. But that does not mean that it is repaired within 24 hours. And I will happily walk your guest through Emerentia, where I happen to be talking to you from, where I can see, as I walk my dogs every morning, manhole covers that are missing. So I really think we need to get past it's a tragedy, which it is. We need to deal with the infrastructure, because the family are going to be left with a loss forever. And the question is, are we going to do something about it? Or is it going to be another tragedy like Life Esidimeni? And I use Life Esidimeni deliberately because at the end of those hearings, the Premier of the province had the decency to say, I take full responsibility for this. That was the first time a politician had stood up and said it, but he did it. And it's not enough when a child may be dying or have died to say my annual report says the following. The question is whose head is going to roll as a result of not doing their job? That's the question we need to be asking of all the entities, because they are no different Joburg agencies from SOEs. They are performing a function and they're not doing it well enough. And we have this missing child. That's if you want proof, there's the child.
And he's not the only one. You see, I think Professor goes back to my point that, of course, we understand that at the moment, priority should be finding Khaya and giving closure. But at the same time, it is important as well to figure out who takes responsibility for this incident and many others. Khaya is just, his family is just, I don't even want to use the word fortunate right now, Mr. Mukwebo, because they still don't have their child, but at least resources are being used to try and find them this closure. But there's been so many, and you have to admit that, you can't just say, like he says, that time right now is not about the blame game, etc. Tomorrow it could be your child. Tomorrow it could be mine. And in the meantime, who do we say takes responsibility? It's criminal, actually, to just sit there and say we wait for reports and for the society to let us know. But I'm going to ask you to just sit with us here in studio while we take you to a short break. We're going to try and bring in Dr. Robert Mulawuti. I just want to know from EMS themselves, when exactly do they say that their job is done? And who do they hand over to once they say that they have not been able to find this child and that they've tried everything that they can? And where would this leave the family? Do stay tuned.